Greetings, everybody out there. Good to have you back for another video. Today's video is going to be code free. It's just going to be purely conceptual, and the title here, as you see, is Being a Data Skeptic When the Data is Not the Phenomenon. So that's the subtitle, and as you know, being a data skeptic, it doesn't mean that you casually just dismiss all data. No, data is really valuable, and we can draw lots of valuable insights from data in many ways, as you know. But it's about taking a second look at data and not just sort of swallowing everything up that we see and assuming that data is always the answer to everything, or that the data in front of us is always relevant or valid. And that's that skepticism, I think, comes as you gain more and more familiarity and expertise working with data. So that intro aside, let's get right down to it. There's going to be two examples in this video. One of them is hypothetical and one of them is completely real. So we'll start with the hypothetical example, and that's right here. So I want you to imagine two food trucks. And I should state the disclaimer up front. These are pictures that I took from a site called Pexels. Any resemblance they bear to actual food trucks is purely hypothetical. And if you are the owner of these food trucks, by no means do I, am I basing this off of anything real. Okay, that out of the way, what I want you to imagine is this first food truck, fish and chips. Okay, and the second one here, happy beginning, maybe with an N somewhere that fell off. But I want you to imagine these two trucks, right? And so we see from the lines that this fish and chips food truck, a lot of words to say at once, the fish and chips food truck is really popular. We got all kinds of people there waiting to put in their orders. The other food truck, really not so much. And just in the spirit of the hypothetical example, I want you to imagine that this food truck is wildly popular because people love the food. There's something about the quality of the food, maybe the prices, maybe the quality of the service that's got people coming back. So they know to expect it, they know when to expect it, they know where to go to get it, and they're willing to wait for it. They're willing to wait for the privilege of being able to hand over their own money to get those fish and chips and assorted related menu items. But unfortunately for the owner of the other food truck, that is not the case for them. Nobody's there because it's the food is maybe there's an issue with the freshness or the quality. Maybe the people doing the customer service are just not the best. But because of these differences, though, there's this wild divergence in terms of popularity and then revenue and profit. So what I want you to imagine, silly as it may sound, is the owner of this food truck on the right, it looks at the situation and says, you know what's going to save me? Data. I need data. If only I had data, or I could analyze my data, or have someone analyze my data for me, I wouldn't have these problems. Everything would be great. And that's where I want some skepticism to kick in on your part. And you might already know where I'm going here. The problem with that is data is not your problem, sir. Your problem is your actual business, and people aren't coming to you because of other issues. So all the data in the world isn't going to change that. What's going to change that is better freshness, better quality, maybe replace your serving staff. Think about those issues. I'm not going to say that data couldn't help a little bit. Maybe you notice that on days where a certain employee is working, sales especially go down. Well, okay, now that could be interesting. And that might point to something. There might be an issue about a particularly surly employee causing problems, and you could tease that out through the data, and then you could act on it. So it might help you a little bit, but it's not going to be your everything solution panacea. Now, if we contrast that with the food truck on the left, what we could say is data could make it even better. Maybe on Mondays, there's a particular food that gets ordered a lot for whatever reason. We don't even need to know why, but the data shows us that we run out of this food particularly quickly, specifically on Mondays. Okay, well, that's a data advantage. We could take the data, we could take that data and we can use that insight and, of course, order more of that on Mondays. So we can incrementally improve this food truck with data. Although the food truck, I should say, is doing quite well, even without, as to our knowledge, any data analytics going on with it. But it could be incrementally better with it. Happy Beginning could perhaps be slightly better, maybe do some things, but the fundamental reasons for the popularity of this truck or the unpopularity of another are just not related to data. So, obvious as it may sound, I want you just to remember that example the next time someone explains some shortcoming as, well, it's only just because I didn't have any data, or if data would have fixed a problem, if they're saying data would fix a problem that's really not appropriate for a data-only solution. That just with the presence of analytics, some structural fundamental problem would suddenly be solved. Finally, I'm going to go to a real example from my own professional life. Now, the chart I made, so the chart I just simulated, I didn't want to call out any particular company by name, but I'll tell you the story here now. So before I became a full-time lecturer, I was a tutor. So I tutored students primarily in the GRE and the GMAT. And a lot of ups and downs to that. I much prefer classroom teaching, and so thank goodness that's what I do nowadays. But what I want to do is really focus on what's going on here. And so I titled this When Data Becomes a Gimmick. So there's one particular test company, and they have a business, and I respect that. They sell students banks of practice tests. So a student can get online, set up an account, and then have access to whatever number of tests this company cooks up. And there are many companies like that. So nothing really too wild or innovative or creative about that model. But this company in particular did a lot with these score reports that it would generate for students afterwards. And so it would come up with these things. It would have all kinds of different graphs, and I just made one for this example. But they would come up with pie charts and bar graphs and histograms and line plots and just lots of stuff. And it would be really specific. So it might say something like, okay, well, across the entire test, this was how you performed with these different types of problems. So the bars are filled in by no or yes answers, and you can see here is your performance broken down by area. So you look at that and maybe you say, all right, I need to really work on word problems more, or maybe I'm doing all right in geometry, so maybe I'll spend more time studying algebra. Maybe that's the takeaway there. But then they would get really specific. So they'll come up with things like, well, during the last 10 minutes of the quant sections, we broke that down for you too, and we found that of the questions you answered in the last 10 minutes, you got from this chart that the student didn't miss any probability questions or didn't miss any word problems. Okay, so then people look at that. Our first reaction of a lot of students is like, oh wow, it's analytics. This is amazing. Look at all the detail, and they know me. They've really explained me here. What can I do with it? And I never really played into this. I think this is really gimmicky because and for the reason for that really gets a little bit into domain knowledge related to these tests. But I think this is really gimmicky because although this looks like it's going to help someone in some way, it really doesn't. And in fact, I actually think it's a distractor, because ultimately the thing about all these tests is when you get things wrong, the students who are willing to really deeply explore those questions, and if this faucet can fill a bathtub in 30 minutes and that faucet can fill a bathtub in 20 minutes and the two faucets are working together, how fast are you going to fill the bathtub? Well, there's a process for questions like that. There is a process you can learn, and you can really learn how to set those up and make those really easy and make them less confusing than they often are at first. But that process has nothing to do with any of this. This isn't really helping. It looks sort of cool, and it's like, wow, what should I do differently in the last 10 minutes? Nothing. Do nothing differently. Maybe the student waited to answer some of the ones, they spent more time at the end on these, or they saved some of the ones till the end, they swung quickly at the hard ones. I don't know. But the issue is, if they want a better score, this isn't it. What they need to do is dive into all the errors they made and look. But the problem with that is that's hard, right? So that's not often what we want. We want quick solutions. That's why if we go to the doctor and say, hey doc, what should I do? I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. And if the doctor says, well, diet and exercise, well, what are we going to say back? Well, okay, no, but what else? I mean, besides diet and exercise, what could you tell me? And that's just a natural answer people have. And that's the equivalent here is if someone said, well, what should I do? Well, the answer is, first of all, throw these two charts away and let's sit down together and let's look at the ones you missed and let's really understand why and learn the problems and not think that some gimmick is going to save the day. And this was just one little slice. I mean, I could have made more charts here to try to show that how other ways they presented this, but the ultimate idea is that focusing on this is really missing the point, and it's really missing the important things that a student could do. So that's the point of this snippet. This conceptual video is just one aspect of your data science skepticism, is to just be wary of situations in which the data itself is not the phenomenon, and which data analytics is not going to provide the solution. So thank you very much for viewing.